Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is a trainer education, and it's on verbal communication cues. So this stuff, like I said in the most recent trainer education podcast as well, is there's a lot of life lessons for these things. So it does expand past being a personal trainer. So anybody who has to kind of work with other people, this is helpful. And then also, a lot of the stuff we talk about with personal training is it's not only like business related, but there's also like just some kind of like intrapersonal relationship skills, meaning like how do we talk better to the people of our life and who are in our life. So this is one of those things where there's some kind of lessons along here for everybody. So hopefully people who chime into these ones who aren't trainers, hopefully you still find some benefit to these. So, and then of course, I definitely hope there's benefit to the trainers themselves. So that would be nice. Otherwise, I'm missing the point entirely. So what we're going to discuss in this one is kind of verbal communication with clients during actual training sessions. And we have kind of 5 areas we're going to look at. There's more than 5, but this kind of helped kind of narrow me down so I didn't talk too long. And then also, I wanted to specify that it's with clients during sessions. So if you want to learn kind of like verbal communication or just communication in general related to like how to sell training sessions or how to deal with social media, we have podcast 272, which is titled How to Sell Sessions Without Selling Your Soul. And you can check that one out. That kind of deals with communication when in those circumstances. So on social media and trying to sell sessions. So what we're going to look at here is just 5 ways to kind of communicate better, or 5 areas of interest in communication with clients during actual sessions. So we're going to start with kind of the most nitty-gritty, like kind of detail-oriented ones, is while they're doing an actual exercise. So one of the things we try to do, I'm just going to list through this, give you some quick examples, and you guys can write this stuff down. So is one of the things we do, we're going to talk about is correcting, like how to correct people. So that is something we do during the exercise, but that's a whole different category. So while somebody's actually doing the exercise, 2 things that I wanted to kind of focus on is how you can change your speech in order to influence what you want your client to do. So these are kind of like indirect verbal communication. So I can actually change my speech volume, and that'll actually promote the person to kind of be more excited, be more intense, or I can promote them to kind of slow down and calm down. So if I have somebody who's say they're moving like 100 miles an hour. So I've had clients before where we've talked about the importance of muscle intention and not moving with kind of momentum. They need to really focus in on what they're doing and feel the muscles work. We have this awesome conversation, and then I give them the weight, and they move 1,000,000 miles an hour and don't do any of the damn things I just told them. So it's like, oh, shit. So one of the things you can do, instead of going, stop, what the hell were you listening to? Were you even listening to me? That isn't gonna go well. So one of the things you can do is change your volume. So I will actually count like reps for people out loud at that time, and I'll count slower, softer. So we're going to talk about speech speed as well, but even softer can get somebody to calm down. So if they're going 1,000,000 miles an hour and I go 1, 2, 3, they're going to feel how like calm I am, and it's going to get them to calm down more. So I just listened to a podcast this morning that was actually not related to the gym world. It was more of like a religious-based podcast, but they were talking about the concept of mirror neurons. So we have this kind of these neurons in our brain that which when we are communicating with someone, we kind of pick up on what they're doing, and we have a natural tendency to kind of match. And this has to deal with evolutionary stuff to where it served in our best interest to get along with people at the beginning stages of life here on Earth. So if we got along with people and we were friends, we would help each other find food. We'd help each other find safety and shelter. So we developed an ability to kind of match the other person. So, and this would be like if they're super excited, we're more likely to be excited. If they're depressed, we're more likely to be depressed. So we kind of have a natural tendency to match whoever's around us. Now, if you are aware of this, okay, everybody has it to like different degrees, but everybody has it at some degree. If you're aware of that, you can use that in your favor. So if I have somebody who I want them to get like more excited, so like instead of me going, hey, okay, I want you to get ready for this set and I want you to, put your best effort into it. I could be more aggressive and be like, hey, I need you to get ready. Let's put everything we have into this set and let's kill this set. And you can hear like the loudness kind of like shocks them a little bit, and it can get their attention, and it can kind of like do that fight or flight mode. If you get them like excited a little bit, it brings up adrenaline, brings up endorphins, and it can get them on board with trying a little harder. So if you have somebody who's super passive, I'm not saying yell at them. Like, don't be like, come on, you pansy. But just start being a little bit louder, a little more like boisterous, and that'll actually bring them forth a little bit too. So you have to do it to where you're leading them where you want them to be. Don't just slam on top of them with things. So, for example, if I have somebody who's very sheepish, okay, very quiet, I don't want to just go ultra aggressive right away. They'll actually feel kind of attacked, not like personally attacked, but their demeanor will shut down even more. So if you have somebody who's non-confrontational and you act confrontational, that is not going to go well. Okay, they're going to go in the opposite direction of what you want. So you have to meet them a step above where they are. When they come up to you, you take another step. When they come up to you, you take another step. So these are kind of the verbal cues that we would want to learn. So you can do it, like I said, in speech volume and in speech speed. So if somebody is going super fast, I'll actually count slightly behind them in their reps. So I don't have a way of doing this verbally. I normally explain this one with like a visual cue of my arms mimicking like the repetitions, where the person's speed might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I'm going to count 1, 2, 3. And you can hear there's a little bit of a delay. So they'll do the rep, and then where you normally say 1, I kind of wait a half a second and say 1. They do the next one, I wait another half a second and say 2. And they feel like the cadence of me counting is off from their movement. But if I maintain my cadence, they'll change their movement to match my cadence. So they'll feel the dissymmetry there, or the that it's not equal, it's not right, and they'll modify to match you. Now, likely, if I have somebody going too slow, I'll count slightly ahead. So if their pace is 1, 2, 3, I'll count slightly ahead and go 1, 2, 3, and then they'll start to kind of speed up to keep up with me. So instead of me having to tell them all the time, like, hey, I need you to go slower. Hey, I need you to go faster. Then the next set, hey, I need you to go slower. Hey, I need you to go faster. You sound like a broken record, and you're going to come across as correcting them all the time. So one of the things I try to be aware of during any training session with my clients is to limit the number of times I have to correct them. And in correcting them in a direct manner. Because when people have to be corrected, they feel like they're getting things wrong. So they kind of start shutting down, they start questioning themselves, and everybody has a different capacity of how much correction they can handle. So I don't want to waste my corrections whenever I might be able to do the corrections through just simple speech, volume, and speed. So instead of me having to correct them, 3 or 4 sets in a row about their speed, I just do the volume stuff and the speed stuff, and it gets the correction that I want, but it doesn't take away from my correction count of what that person might be able to handle in terms of being actually directly corrected. Now, this might sound completely insane that I worry about these kind of things, but I've been personal training for 17 years, and in order to get the best results out of people, you have to pay attention to some of these nitty-gritty type details. So if you're a trainer like, that's bullshit, I'm just going to tell people how it is, good freaking luck. Okay? That ain't going to work. So there's that golden rule of do unto others as you'd have done unto you. That is of the assumption that the other people can handle the same shit you can handle. And that is absolutely not true. There are people who can handle way more than you will ever be able to handle. Okay? So don't think you're Mr. or Mrs. Hardcore. There are some tough-ass human beings out there on the planet. Okay? Now, you also have the ones that can't handle what you can handle. So you might be like, maybe you have a sport background and you're used to having a coach tell you you're an idiot the whole time and just correcting you over and over again. And you're like, yeah, whatever, I'll be fine. And you can kind of shrug it off. Some people can't do that. They do not have a sport background. They don't have a history of like corrective style of parenting. So they will absolutely shut down when you start behaving in that way. So you can't just be you and treat them how you want to be treated. You have to meet them in the middle. I'm not saying don't be you to some degree. You have to be yourself. But at the same time, you can't just be, an aggressive asshole to calm people, like meek people, and think that they're going to respond well to that, okay? So you have to be careful and make sure that you're not over aggressive to people. And then if you have an aggressive person, if you're aggressive back, that is not going to go well. All of a sudden it turns into an ego competition. So I've had guys come in. It's most often guys that are over egotistical or over aggressive. But they'll come in and, they want to show off when they're doing something. So I'll give them a technique, like a pre-exhausted technique, where I purposely crush their strength and then tell them over and over again how unimportant the top end might be for their goal. Maybe their goal is muscle damage. And I'm like, hey, you know what? Instead of you pressing 100-pound dumbbells and when you're totally fresh all the time and then complaining why your elbow hurts, why don't we do some pre-exhaust, do some flies first, and then you might only have to press the 80-pound dumbbells to get the same stimulation. You're going to protect your joints. You're going to feel a lot better. So I'll even tell them like my story. I'll say, hey, like I've even had workouts where I'll get great training out of 50-pound dumbbells. So I tell them the importance of why they need to drop their ego. I then tell them the ways in which I've dropped my ego, and I also act without an ego. So I try not to, if they're going like, oh, that's kind of pansy stuff, I'd say, hey, you know what? That's that's something that's common that people might think is like, oh, if I lift light, I'm going to be weak. That's not really true. There's a lot of really strong people out there who do this pre-exhaust method, have big muscles. They kind of like take care of their joints. So, like one example is John Meadows. He's really good with the idea of pre-exhaust. So if you want to look him up, he's actually been somebody who's bodybuilding for, 20 plus years. And you can look him up, see he has a great physique, very strong, and he does pre-exhaust all the time and never really worries about the top end weight. So I'll explain stuff like that to them and actually give an example that they can go look up. And then that helps them. Then they'll kind of like calm themselves down. The ego comes down a little bit and they meet me in the middle. So that's one way of kind of communicating in terms of like with an aggressive person is bringing them down. More often, you're going to have to bring somebody who's kind of too sheepish and not aggressive up. So sometimes you have to kind of give them a pep talk, and try to get them moving faster and more aggressively. So, but that's something you can pay attention to, okay? Is during exercises, you can play with your speech volume and speech speed. So if you're counting reps, that's one of the most clear examples of this, but there are others. You can also just do that in all of your conversation. So the other areas we're going to talk about is how to encourage people, how to correct people, how to reinforce past lessons. In all of that talking, if you talk faster, you get the person more excited. If you talk slower, you get them to calm down. So, and if you talk loud, you can kind of bring them up out of being like kind of like scared or kind of like quiet. Or if you talk softly, you can get them to calm down and kind of bring their ego down. So in everything you say throughout an entire training session, not only during the set, not only the way you count reps, in every single thing you say, you can pay attention to your volume and your speed and manipulate the moment to what you need. Okay, so just remember those mirror neurons. People will follow you. So take them where you want them to go. Okay, the next thing we have is encouraging. So how to encourage people? First of all, only be truthful. So I can't stand when trainers try to be super duper peppy and they're like, oh man, you're doing great. And you look at the person and they're half-assing everything. They're not even really into it. So just bullshitting somebody. Nobody likes a bullshit compliment. Okay, everybody knows when they're bullshit, and nobody likes them. Nobody responds well to them. You're just going to look like a psycho, just telling people they're great all the time when they're not. Okay, so you have to only be truthful. And even to the point that if there's nothing truthful and kind of positive to say, don't say anything. So I've had somebody get done like multiple times, probably thousands of times. Somebody will get done with something and I go, how was that? And I was kind of looking at them and go, well, Uh, you did it. Said you put in some effort, you showed up, but we got some things we got to work on. And they'll start laughing because they can tell how like ridiculously like there's no detail in that compliment whatsoever. It was like, so they'll go, so in other words, it was shit. And then I'll go, yeah, pretty much. And we just kind of laugh. But at the same time, as I'm not going to tell them like, hey, you know what, that was really good. However, we need to fix every single thing about it. What? That doesn't make any sense. And they're going to know that. Okay. So you have to be truthful when you give encouragement. So don't just be like Miss, Peppy Peppy and tell people great job whenever they're doing a shit job. Okay, people know when they're being lazy. So if you call them out on it and go, say they get done with something and say, well, I've seen people do it worse, but not too often than that. So, or some kind of joke. Like I like to do that way. Like when I'm trying to say something, like corrective, get their attention. If you joke a little bit about it, it's more fun. Okay, but that can get them to kind of laugh a little bit. You break the ice a little bit, and then you can give them some corrections when you're in this happier state. Okay, so whereas I've seen people like encouraging, like I said, where like somebody will be doing something, and this was one of the worst examples ever. Is there was a trainer at this big gym I used to go to, and he was texting on his cell phone, wasn't even looking at his client, and he was going, "Yep, looks good." Looks good, keep it up. And I'm like, you asshole, you're not even looking at that person. That person was meanderingly kind of going through the set. Their technique was meh. There was nothing good about it. And that guy didn't care. That guy's an asshole. Hopefully he's no longer training. But we don't want to be one of those people who compliments when there's nothing to actually be complimentary about. Okay? And then you also have to find your style. So I have met some trainers before who are super bubbly and they're super excited all the time, and they're just happy people. So those are the people we all hate because they're just in a good mood all the damn time. So, but you'll see trainers who, like, when they're doing something with a client, they're going, like, they say the client has 10 reps, they're going, you're doing really well. You're moving really well. I really like the quality of this. You're doing good. Keep it going. Keep it going. We're almost there. Got 2 more. Good. Then we got 1 more. Okay, and done. Well done. That was really nice. So that sounds great and all, and it works for that person, but I do not talk like that. And that person would annoy the shit out of me if I was doing my exercise. So I'd be like, calm down, just leave me alone. But whereas like my style would be, I'm like, okay, let's do 10, and I'm going like I'm counting or I'm looking at their cues. I might be like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they'll get to 10, and I'll go, okay, good job. Okay, we're gonna move on to da da da, and that's all I say because that's all they did. They did a good job. We're okay. Let's move on. So I tend to be very minimal in my positive feedback, and I don't do it intentionally. It's just this is gonna. My mom and dad might laugh at this if they're listening to this podcast, but it's the way I was brought up. Is if we did something we were supposed to do, you didn't get praised for it. You were supposed to do that. So like, so if they told us, chores when we were growing up, they're like, hey, I need you to take out the trash. We'd take out the trash, come back in, be like, we took out the trash. And they go, okay. That was it. Like, they're not going to praise you. They asked you to do that. That's what you were supposed to do. Why the hell would you get praised for that? You just did what you were supposed to do. You only get praised when you go above and beyond and do something extra. So if I took out the trash, and we used to have a coal furnace. So say I took out the trash, I emptied out the coal, I swept the floor to make sure the dust was gone, and then I told them that, and they go, oh, hey, thank you for doing the stuff with the coal. And done. That's it. We move on. So you get your thank you, but that's only if you go above and beyond. So I tend to only give compliments if somebody kind of does something above and beyond. So if you just did what I asked you to do, congratulations, I'm glad you did that, but I'm not going to kiss your ass. So I wouldn't want somebody kissing my ass just because I do the normal things. The second you start praising somebody for being normal, all of a sudden normal seems special to them. And then you're never going to expect them, they're never going to become better than that. So if you encourage and praise mediocrity, that's all you're ever going to get. Okay? So I'm not saying be a jerk, but I'm just saying, like, when you encourage people, make sure it's a truthful encouragement. Don't encourage them for half-ass effort. Don't encourage them for mediocrity. Okay? Don't encourage them when there's nothing to encourage. So be yourself. If you're a bubbly person, be bubbly. If you're an asshole like me, be an asshole. But just make sure you're always truthful. Okay, so don't praise people if it's not deserved. So that might be very counterintuitive to what people thought I was going to say about encouraging, but you have to be real. So it's when somebody's not real, when you have this fake personality, this fake person, people don't like that. Okay, they're not going to respond well to it. They're coming to you, they're paying you money because they want to get better. If you just kiss their ass for every half-assed thing they do, they're never going to get better. Okay? So be encouraging when they deserve it, but don't encourage them when they don't. Okay? Now, what about corrections? So when we have to correct people. So it's cliche, but it's a good advice, is the compliment sandwich. Is you want to tell them something they're doing well, give them the correction that you would like to give, like have them do, and then compliment them again. Say something good. So you might be like, say they got done with a set of squats. And I'd say, hey, you know what? You did a great job. I like the confidence in which you were coming down. However, we did go forward into our toes. So come down with that same confidence, same good speed, but try to keep your weight more in your heels. Okay, then when you come up, that's going to feel a lot better. It won't feel so much pressure in your lower back or pressure in your knees. It won't feel like you're getting kind of pushed forward by the bar. So you're doing a good job. We just want to add that to it. So you can hear how that's pretty good positive feedback, right? Like you end that conversation and they kind of feel good. Whereas if they get done with the set and you say, hey, I need you to sit back in your heels more. Ugh, that's not good, right? That's kind of like, it's almost like you're yelling at them. No one likes that, okay? So when you give corrections, if you give them in the compliment sandwich style, the person will stay receptive, and you can actually give more corrections per training session. So like we said, people can only handle so many corrections. But the nicer you give them, the more they can handle. If you're a jerk and abrupt about the corrections, they're going to shut down faster on you. Okay, and you'll see it, you'll feel it, you'll know what I mean when you see it happening. But that's something to pay attention to, is a compliment sandwich. Give them some kind of good feedback, give them a pause, something you want them to correct, and then give them another kind of good feedback. Okay, so that's what our goal is. The other thing is when you give corrections, keep them simple. Okay, only give them like maybe one correction per set, maybe two if you have to. So if it's a safety factor, but don't lay on them like 7 things and expect them to fix all 7 in the next set. Okay, so even if their form is absolutely horrendous, okay, don't tell them everything in one go. So you might not even be able to fix everything in one workout. So that's something you have to pay attention to, is you might have the sensation of, I wonder if I'm like nitpicking them or overcorrecting them. So first of all, you have to address anything that causes a safety concern. You have to keep your clients safe. So that's not optional. You got to correct them on those. So do the compliment sandwich. However many times cues you got to give them, you got to keep them safe. Okay. So that's first of all. Then what you want to think to yourself is, okay, if in this workout we've already addressed 2 or 3 things, they've had some struggles, but they're doing okay. Don't keep laying on them. Okay. So that might be starting to get nitpicky. But if they come in and you only worked on, say, 0 or 1 thing so far, and you still have a good bit of time in the session to go, and they're still happy and they're still being cool and responsive, then you can probably add in another one. So that idea of being nitpicky, is you have to address anything that keeps them safe. That's not an option. Even if that means you're nitpicky, you have to keep them safe. Okay, so then on top of that, it just depends on how much you've already worked on in that session, what their demeanor is. If they're already kind of a little bit demoralized, if they're already kind of having a rough day, you probably want to stop for that day in terms of corrections. So you just got to kind of play it by ear and see how they feel. Okay, now another conversation that comes up sometimes with trainers is the concern of their appearance as a trainer to other people. So they're like, man, my client, their form looks like shit. So I want to try to correct them on as many things as I can so they look good, so I'll look good. Yeah, but if in the meanwhile, and trying to get those corrections, you completely crush your client's spirit, that is not cool. That is not fair. Okay, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. Your appearance is not more important than their results, and especially just their well-being and who they are as a human being. So if you crush their soul just because you want to try to look good, you're an asshole. Don't do that, okay? You're there to take care of this person, to love on this person, to help them on their journey of health and happiness, not to make sure you look good, okay? So you're there for them. They're not there for you, okay? You got to pay attention to that. So what you want to do is you want to get like the best way ever to make sure that you look good as a trainer is to get your clients results, okay? That's your number one focus. So if the client looks like absolute shit while they're doing an exercise, but it looks better than the last time they did the exercise, freaking victory. Okay? So if somebody's judging on you from the outside and they're saying, well, if I was working on that person, I'd tell them this, and then this, and this, who gives a shit what that person thinks? If they think they're all high and mighty, you wouldn't want them to, you shouldn't care about their respect anyhow. Okay? So we've had trainers in the past where I remember one trainer, a very good friend of mine, he was training out of my gym, and one of the members said, hey, your client needs to do this. And I looked over at the member, and so did the trainer, and then the trainer was about to say something, probably not nice. So they looked at me like, I'm about to say something and get myself in trouble, but I don't want to get in trouble with you. So I looked at the member and I said, hey, mind your own business. And then after their training session was over, when that trainer and their client were away, I told that member, I said, hey, listen, you are not a trainer. You're not certified. You're not educated in any way whatsoever. You know nothing about this person's backstory. You don't know if they have an injury they're trying to work around. You don't know shit. It is inappropriate for you to speak up. If you think somebody might be possibly getting hurt, then ask the trainer to speak with them. Okay? Or say, hey, can I butt in for a second? I'm not sure if this person's going to be, safe or something. So there's a difference in doing that. You can do that with respect and if you are truly concerned with that client's health. But that wasn't this case. You just wanted to try to prove that you were some smarty pants. So we don't need that here. Okay? So you do not correct our trainers in front of their clients. Just try to make yourself feel special. If you think it's safety, that's one thing. But in a case like this, said you don't get to do that again. This was your only warning. And I actually ended up kicking out that member because they were kind of an asshole anyhow. But I remember that was a case where the trainer kind of came back to me afterwards. We were talking, we went out to lunch. And they said, man, that kind of stinks, Like, I knew this client wasn't, doing it right, but, like, I was trying my best, and I was like, no, you're fine, you're fine. So I kept trying to tell them they were okay, because that trainer knew the person's history. That trainer knew what that client could handle, corrections-wise, and they were getting results for that client. So that was the bigger picture. The person who judged on them would have never got personal training anyhow because they thought they knew everything already. And they're already kind of like an asshole human being. So we don't care what the opinion of asshole human beings are, okay, of us. So I do care about what a good person thinks of me, but I don't give a shit what an asshole thinks of me, okay? I probably need to stop cussing so much on these podcasts. But that's what we want to think of. So if you're a trainer and you feel this kind of pressure or this worry about what your appearance is based on the quality of your client doing stuff, don't overcorrect your client. Okay, just out of fear of what you look like and crush them. Okay, make it a bad session for them or beat them up emotionally or mentally. Okay, your goal is to love on this person, help this person. So just do whatever is going to get them the best results. And over time, you will look like a fantastic, amazing trainer because that person will get results. So anybody seeing you from the outside today, okay, when they look at you in a month and they go, holy hell, that client, like, man, that's like they're leaner, they're better looking. Look at the technique they have now. They're going to see how far you've traveled in that time. And then that's how they're going to get like respected to you as a trainer, is the progress that you got that client. They're not going to be impressed by you if you just beat the shit out of your client and yell at them for an hour. That's not helpful to anybody, okay? That isn't even going to make you look good. You might think you need to do that to save your appearance, but you're actually just going to look like a jerk. So you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. So the best thing to do is just don't, okay? Just focus on your trainer. Make it not about you. Imagine that. Like, things in life are not about you sometimes. So just focus on your client, okay? And get your client results, okay? Make everything about the client. Cool. Okay. So we're getting a little long-winded, but we're going to keep going. So hopefully this is still interesting. So the next thing we have to say, kind of a quick one, is when you're reinforcing past lessons, so things you've taught your client before, make sure you don't nag on them, okay? So don't say, hey, are you still doing those exercises I told you to do? So maybe like if you had somebody who had like, maybe they wanted to get like extra results, like get a little bit like lean around the stomach. So you told them a couple nutritional things, you told them a couple training things, and you want to follow up now